your game was the pretty much encyclopedia definition of what people that really want promotion and relegation.
Yeah.
That's what they don't want.
There are now 3 billionaire owners plus Red Bull out of a 10-team league.
Could end up with a few dead rounds at the end, which is pretty disastrous, right?
It's rare, though, in the last 10 years maybe, that we've got this far out and gone, there's only really going to be 5 or 6 that are going to get in here.
They're the reigning champions. They have the strongest squad by an absolute mile. Is there a danger that they become so far ahead of everyone else? Hello, this is The Ruck, the journalists' rugby podcast from The Times and The Sunday Times. The Gallagher Prem is back. It's Monday, and we are back in studio. We're not recording this from the cobbled streets of Rome or from a cafe in Paris in the sunshine after Super Saturday. We're back in studio, but what a pleasure. Alongside me, once again, is Will Kelleher.
Hello, how's it going?
Very good, thank you, Will. Alex Lowe as well.
Hello.
And Charlie Morgan.
Hi, pal.
How are we, chaps? No Six Nations, but no rest weeks here, no mandatory stand-down period for any of us.
We all did a game. I was at Bath, you were at Quins, Alex.
Yeah.
Charlie was at Tigers. Well, that sounded
It was dreadful. We'll come to, I had a moment in the game where I was like, is this dreadful because last week I was watching one of the great test matches, or is it actually dreadful? And no, it was actually dreadful.
What was the point? Can we ask what the point was? Because Brian O'Driscoll's, I'm not sure they're good enough for professional rugby, paraphrasing slightly, is about as damning as...
It was first half. I mean, there was a couple of moments, like about 3 minutes in.
Wow.
3 minutes?
No, it was about 3 minutes in where
Stu
Townsend throws a pass to Marcus Smith, who isn't looking, and it bounces off his chest, knock on, Gloucester score a try off the back of it. And you're like, that didn't happen last week. Do you know what I mean? That was... And there were incidents like that got repeated through the game. It was pretty budget.
Well, I was looking at mine, I was at Bath 62, Saracens 15, and I was totting it up afterwards, and I was like, I think I've seen 24 tries in the last 2 games I've watched live or something like that. It was absolutely mad. And that was a stupid one because Saracens were quite good for about 15 minutes and then just got absolutely blown apart. So... I quite enjoyed my Friday night, but maybe because I was at a club who've got their act together and they're at home and everyone was loving it and the money's come in and everything else, and so it felt like
and the
a
game
nice
that you were at on Sunday also put the Quins game into perspective, because that was...
But as you wrote in your report, your game was the pretty much encyclopedia definition of what people that really want promotion and relegation.
Yeah.
That's what they don't want, and that's what they see as being a real kind of... negative point to this change.
But so you're right. We'll come on to the matches in more detail in just a moment. But I feel like we've been speaking about Quins like this for a long time. And Laurie Dalrymple came on the pod, didn't he, a few months back and fronted up with you guys. And they've spoken about trying to, get someone in to properly oversee the club, like a director of rugby or that sort of, get their ducks in a row. But for Quins, for a long time, I've felt that they, besides the kind of history, the name, where they're based, that sort of thing, from a sporting point of view, they have been fairly irrelevant for a couple of seasons. But maybe we'll get on to the games, the Prem returning into the run-in, all that sort of stuff. Also, we're going to be having a chat with Seb Atkinson, Gloucester and England centre, is going to be joining us on the pod later on. Will, you mentioned Bath Friday night and a team that have sort of sorted themselves out, I suppose. Big news last week, the big rugby news domestically in England in the last week or so. James Dyson becoming a 50% shareholder in Bath. He's been investing in the club for quite a long time. They had sponsorship on the shirts, and you've seen him in the box with Bruce Craig loads of times on the TV. But big news, big investment, owning 50% of the club. I suppose my first question for you guys is, coupled with the Red Bull investment in Newcastle, how significant is this in terms of the landscape and the investment in English Prem clubs?
Yeah, it's huge for Bath and feels like it secures their future ad infinitum almost.
What is he, 4th richest man in the UK?
Yeah, he is. Family fortune of 21 billion, which is not bad if you can get it. And it seems like, talking to a few people who have watched his sort of support of Bath grow over the last 30, 40 years, his box that was next to Bruce Craig's used to be full of businessmen and women and things like that, but it's actually now his grandchildren. And I guess the hope is there's sustainability there, because he's 78 himself, and the worry with these big rich investors is that when they unfortunately pass away, so does their ownership of the club. And we've seen struggles with owners trying to get rid of clubs and that not happening, like Mick Crossan at London Irish, who was trying to sell the club for £1 and no one wanted it, and then they just disappear. And so if his family take it on as he wants them to, and they seemingly are engaged to do so, then you think that this is a club that's going to be surviving and thriving for decades and decades to come. But yeah, on the point of that franchising thing, I asked that directly. So I spoke to Sir James Dyson, Alfie. Sir James
Sorry,
Dyson,
I'll get that right.
to you.
Yeah.
And Bruce Craig the other day when they announced this. And first things first, Sir James has got a very nice house. So I was on a Teams call with them, and he was in a lovely marble-halled room with one of his vacuum cleaners in the corner, which was nice product placement. And it was one of those rooms where you're a bit like, does that need hoovering ever?
I was hoping you'd say you had a Henry Hoover or something in the corner. That would have been really funny.
These are much better. The suction on that, can't believe it. But I asked directly Bruce Craig that question of, is the decision to franchise the Prem, has that sort of accelerated this investment? And I think his public answer was no, but then you speak to a lot of people around it and they say the confidence that has given investors is definitely part of it. And the particular second bit with Bath is obviously they're trying to spend £70 million or thereabouts, depending on how prices of everything changes with war in the Middle East and all that, on the stadium redevelopment. So they have then had their planning permission approval plus the franchising thing. So both of them make investing in a club like Bath a sort of more viable thing to do because there's more security. Because it's an argument we've rehearsed loads of times, isn't it, Alex? And we did on our pod with Stuart Barnes a few weeks ago when we talked about this issue, is that the first thing that investors or people who you're borrowing money from will talk about is what happens if you get relegated. And the answer before now had to be, well, we'll lose all our money and eventually funding and everything else, so it would kind of be a version of oblivion, whereas now that doesn't exist, so therefore you've got that security. And the counter sporting argument to it is what you saw at the Stoop, where the drawbridge gets drawn up, there's no jeopardy at the bottom. Quins in any normal season would be like Tottenham, absolutely desperately worried they're going to get relegated, how on earth, but they're not, and so it doesn't matter. So they can talk about, in March, they can talk about preparing for pre-season, which to people who are spending a lot of money going to a game must be just like, are you joking?
Far fewer people are spending a lot of money to go. Just have a look at how many tickets are unsold for the big game or the big summer kickoff at Twickenham. But yeah, I mean, we had the two extremes of that podcast debate sort of unfolded last week. Quins, who are, they talk about wanting to, they dream big in Europe and they want to finish outside the bottom two, but it doesn't really matter. They are preparing for next year. On the flip side is exactly as you say, the Bath situation where the financing of the new stadium is much easier to attain because you've taken the risk away of relegation. And it was only a theoretical risk, really, and relegation had been in place for the last 3 or 4 years as a structure.
Yeah, was it almost the threat of relegation on a form that they had to fill in for getting loans?
Exactly.
Because they were no one was going to get relegated.
No, it was theoretical, but it was possible.
Yeah.
So while it existed theoretically, and that's why Red Bull came in, and that's where what happened with the Prem and the RFU formalising the top tier as an expansion league, franchise league, that was so obviously going to happen because Red Bull would not have been buying into Newcastle if there was a threat of Newcastle going down. And we knew that, and people on background were telling us that. So the direction of travel was pretty clear. So now you've got Red Bull have come in, Dyson has invested in Bath. There are now 3 billionaire owners plus Red Bull out of a 10-team league. And the people I was speaking to were talking very much about the confidence that will give. Like if Dyson wants in, if Red Bull want in, it goes back to Charlie's story about Tom Brady and the owners of Birmingham City wanting to add a professional Birmingham rugby club to their stable of football and cricket. And then you start thinking, like we're having this discussion about salary cap. Salary cap 6.4 million. Tom Brady earns $3 million per game that he commentates on the NFL on Fox Sports in America. So this is like very, very small beer to these guys. I know Bruce Craig talked about not wanting to increase the salary cap immediately until the rest of the league could afford it, and that does make sense.
It's very noble, yeah.
But but it's definitely the ambition, because if you a jump from 6.4 to 10 million in rugby terms is big, but if you've got billionaire owners, it's nothing. Like, it's nothing.
And would they
it's
only
a rounding error?
Would they only do that once everyone can afford it, or is it to do with how viable the business is to be able to afford it?
That's an interesting point, I think, because there's that balancing thing, which American sports. It's funny, isn't it? Because, which is a bit political, but the most capitalist country in the world has the most socialist sports setup, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, totally.
Everyone is equal kind of thing. But we all know that some are more equal than others as well. Like, similar teams get to the top and go to Super Bowls and things like that. But in the Prem, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you want to get the balance right between rewarding ambition, not capping people's ambition, and then big rich owners like Tom Brady getting involved. And he goes, well, what's the point for me? This isn't fun because I'm only allowed to spend a pitiful amount of cash. I want to get all these great players from around the world, and I can't do it because I can't fit them in this tiny cap. But you also don't want what has happened before, what happened pre-COVID, and then it came out in the wash after COVID, which is overinflating, therefore all the money just going to players, therefore them getting more expensive, therefore you can't keep them, therefore teams do the Icarus thing, they fly too close to the sun and get burnt up, and that's what happened to Wasps, Worcester, London Irish, where you did a piece, Charlie, in the Six Nations with Finn Smith and Seb Atkinson, having grown up together at Worcester, and you look at some of the lineups that they had in that era, and you go, what a great team, but you go, but they couldn't afford it.
Do you think that this weekend, in the aftermath of that news, sort of reinforced that something that the Prem, I think, know, is that if this league is going to be ring-fenced, be a franchise league, which it is going to be, I think they need more variety and more teams. And I think that was really clear from this weekend, from just over the halfway point, having a game that's not even got the bottom team involved, that is essentially a dead rubber and is really hard to generate interest for.
And it's one of only 5 games on the weekend.
Yeah, it's the race for 8th place and the last Champions Cup.
Which is a gag in itself, that 8 teams out of a 10-team league, which we know. But then also I think we're going to end up this playoff race. The 10-team league was sort of, I think, saved last season in that there were quite a lot of fallible teams going for that top 4, and it was a real scramble. I think it's going to probably end up as less of a scramble this year if we think that 11 rounds in, with just 7 left, it feels like Saracens are hanging on to make it 6 into 4. It could very soon be 5 into 4. It could end up with a few dead rounds at the end, which is pretty disastrous, right, for generating interest in the spectacle.
But they've signed up for that. So I think we all agree that let's say a top 6. So the race to be in the Champions Cup becomes much more dramatic. That would benefit the league. But they've signed up for the NFL style system, where if you're out now in the NFL, sometimes it can benefit teams to just keep losing, so they get number 1 draft for the following year. We're sort of seeing that play out at Quins at the moment, where everything now is geared to let's just get through this season. They talk about not wanting to meander, but they were desperate on Saturday. But
Show me a meander if that's not one.
Yeah, like they don't have this search for DORs, etc. But that's what the league has signed up for, and it makes them like open to criticism from someone like Barnsley, who's very, a real believer in promotion and relegation. Some of the people I was talking to after the Dyson thing were saying, right, so as I said, there's now 3 like mega rich owners plus Red Bull. Tony Rowe wants to sell his stake, or wants a new investor into Exeter. The momentum and the confidence that this is giving the industry, it was put to me that now like Exeter suddenly become not just because they're doing well on the field, but you're buying into something that's got it's got investors going, oh, there's something happening in rugby, and again the kind of the romantics of traditionalists won't like a Premiership rugby club being talked of as a sports, as an asset class, as an investment class. But as I just mentioned, the kind of the paltry amount of money it takes when you compare to Premier League football or even Championship football, And we've seen how much the 100 franchises were sold for. And they're teams with no history being valued at 300, 500 million pounds. Cricket has its Indian market. Rugby doesn't have that. But there's a growing confidence in that world that maybe there's something moving in rugby. So what they really want and what they're hoping for is that Red Bull Dyson will lead to Tony Rowe finding an investment house who want to come in on Exeter. Then you've got 5 out of 10, and then let's say the Birmingham idea takes off because they see Red Bull and they see Dyson. There's a hope that it builds an investment momentum, and all of this is very modern, very professional. It's not your local rugby club. It's not that you come through the juniors and you might go and play for the first team, but that's what they as we discussed with Barnsley, the Prem has siphoned itself away from that. So we're talking now about franchise competition where investment is starting to build.
How much does it need the traditional side of it though as well? Can it be a halfway house whereby they've got the traditional brands and cringe at sort of that word, and I know a lot of people will, but can they have that professional side of it tied to the brands, and is that the most powerful way of doing it?
I was going to say that we were talking about this last week, where the nirvana is to find a Red Bull, not a Dyson, because human beings die and some of their money goes with them, whereas massive multinational businesses kind of don't. So it's more secure to have Red Bull, but the thing that you have to sign the Faustian Pact a bit when you go into bed with a Red Bull, because then you become the Red Bulls and you lose the Falcons, you lose the whatever other bits and pieces that you'd built up as your brand and your thing. And I guess, so that's, if Exeter Chiefs were to have the option, it would be like, well, what do we want to keep here and what do we want to lose? And maybe it's a slightly different thing because of the whole Chiefs thing that we don't need to go through. But I think that's interesting, where quite a lot of these are traditional, centuries-old rugby clubs who might have to make quite an interesting sort of branding, marketing decision, a bit like the 100 franchises, which didn't exist from anything. So the Oval Invincibles suddenly become Mumbai Indians London, and people like me, who are a huge Oval Invincibles fan, go, I've got all the old stash now. But you know what I mean? It doesn't really work like that. But like a Leicester Tigers fan might go, all right, so we're now the Leicester Apple or something. Like, what's that? That's not my team. That's not my club. That's not my tradition. That's nothing to do with what we've built here.
It's what they've invested in this pathway. So you look at the Premier League football, different stratosphere in terms of investment, but the same point about ties to community. Like Newcastle United, now owned by Saudis, there's a different vibe about what that club is. I think that the fans are the fans, but what that club stands for is different. Manchester City are not the local city club anymore. Even Liam Gallagher saying he doesn't want to go to the Etihad anymore because it doesn't feel, it's flat.
It was all right at Wembley though.
It was all right at Wembley in his box, but it's that point of, like I take even West Ham, who don't have that success, but they've been sort of ripped out of where they used to be. The community element they don't exist for the community anymore. A lot of those clubs because they're being owned by big investors from overseas, and again, that's the ideal balance. I think, as we said previously about Exeter, like the ideal balance is that Tony Rowe's next door neighbour, who's got £1 billion, buys it and retains the links with the community and everything that helped build the club to where it is, but also elevates it into the next level. The reality is that it'll be an American investment house,
and this is the thing, I guess, because we're comparing apples and pears by talking about football, but if massive football clubs
in financial
money,
terms,
in money,
the community element is the same.
No, but that's what I mean. And if massive football clubs can't resist huge state ownership and enormous companies getting involved, then rugby's got no chance. They've got no leg to stand on because they don't make any money. If someone's coming in going, I'm going to give you all this stuff, but you need to change everything about this place, they're just going to have to say yes.
And it's a balance, right? And it's a mix. So in terms of the rebranding thing, like Bristol becoming Bristol Bears has been relatively seamless. I think there's maybe a few pockets of the fan base that still would rather than be called Bristol Rugby, and that's coincided with also the
Bristol Shoguns.
Exactly, back in the day at the Mem, had many a happy memory on the Thatcher's terrace.
Was the difference with that wasn't driven by a company that they'd been bought by, for example?
Yeah, potentially, and also
not a Red Bulls situation.
It's also coincided with the longest period of kind of solidity and being stable and at the elite level. So, people are probably happier with it as well. Plus they won the Challenge Cup and that sort of thing. The Newcastle thing, again, is if you look at the context of that, you say, all right, you're Newcastle Red Bulls, but you keep your footprint in the northeast, you've still got your club, and also you've probably got a company that are going to invest and hopefully make you competitive in the league. So surely that's better than having a local person that couldn't fund it anymore. So it's all just a couple more on Bath for you. Firstly, you mentioned it earlier. Does this mean now that the stadium, the long-awaited new stadium, will get over the line?
Yeah, I think it was probably going to happen anyway, but they needed to find lots of money to fund it. And now, happy days, they've got a guy who's got billions of pounds. I mean, he probably won't put all of his money into it. But actually, the thing that we should mention too, there's a nuance here as well, is that the money he's invested, it's a bit like when you talk about Lorraine Kelly. Are we talking about Lorraine Kelly, the presenter, or the Lorraine Kelly, the brand, the show? And there's a Dyson as in the company, and then there's a Dyson as in James Dyson, the actual man. I lost you there. No. She did it as a tax thing, I think. Anyway. So,
but it's his personal
fortune that he's investing here, rather than the Dyson sort of company that's investing. The Dyson company sponsor the shirt, but Sir James Dyson's family have bought half of the club.
I do. It's some of the cultural references that we'll get. I didn't see Lorraine Kelly being the link there to James. No, I like it. It's just you keep.
I'm just trying to be relatable here, guys. But what was your question? I've confused myself.
Well, so the stadium is hopefully closer as a result of this. The second question I was going to ask is there a danger here for the rest of the league that Bath, who are already at the moment, but they're the reigning champions, they have the strongest squad by an absolute mile. Is there a danger that they become so far ahead of everyone else?
So it was easy, and as someone who had to do the On the Whistle match report, to just do it about that stuff on Friday night. And because their performance was so, I think I used the phrase, it was like dripped with dynastic power. It was just so, we are here, we're going to be here for a long time. We're bringing 7 lads off the bench. Half of them have got test caps. Some of them have won the World Cup.
Kind of symbolic that it was against the previous significant dynasty in the Premiership.
And they took them apart. And I reference in the second paragraph of the report a game that was also at 5 years before, which was Saracens 71, Bath 17. That was when Bath came bottom of the league, 13th, and you go, now look at them. And Saracens just could not cope. And you think, if you extrapolate that, plus the money, I know they're losing people like Thomas Dutoy next season and Barbary and a few others. They'll look slightly less deep, perhaps. But then you add someone like Kepu Tuipulotu, who's basically, he's the kind of signifier of the next gen of that academy lot coming through. You go, this could be a club who could be at the top of the pile for a long time and shouldn't, if they manage it properly, dip below very high standards. However, in a 10-team league, you can lose 5 games and you're out of the playoffs, can't you? And we've said it before, I think, on pods. It's a bit like a sort of inflated version of the Six Nations. Because it's so small, the Prem, you've probably got 5 or 6 clubs who are having a bad season each year, aren't you? Because half the league's won the title in the last 5 years. And so if they're not doing it the next season, they're disappointed, aren't they? So I don't think you can ever guarantee that Bath are going to just win loads of titles for now because of all the balancing things that have to be put in.
We talked about their window,
yeah,
didn't we? Because the way that their squad was constructed, it gave them a window to maximise it, to go and win the Champions Cup and try and win as many Prem titles as they can. But it's not possible to sustain that. It was very difficult to sustain that forever. So we thought the Saracens thing was going on forever, and now look where they are. Bath are leading the way, but and Bristol are not far behind, and now Exeter have made the top 4, and they're not spending anywhere near what Bath are spending. So you want it to be cyclical, but it needs to be enough clubs need to be at that point, I think, for that to happen.
Yeah, and let's hope that happens. Maybe James Dyson's investment is the second domino to fall after Red Bull in Newcastle. We're going to see loads more. We will wait and see. A quick break here. The other side of Seb Atkinson. We'll have a chat about some of the other big stories in the Prem over the weekend. But up next, it's the Gloucester and England centre, Seb Atkinson.
Okay, so Seb Atkinson's on the pod, live down the line from Kingsholm, from Gloucester. But it's a different week for you this week, isn't it? Seb, you've got Villa Park on the horizon. How cool is that going to be to play in a football ground against Tigers?
Yeah, definitely. Every home game's special for us, but this week there's probably a bit more on the line, playing for a good cause and also a pretty cool stadium.
And does it add a bit of a pep to the step if you know that it's going to be a bigger crowd, a big match bonanza, part of a big weekend, Surrey Saints at Spurs, Bristol Quins at Cardiff? Does it change things in the week for you guys?
Not too much. I guess it'll be our schedule will be similar to an away game. Obviously, it's a home game for us, but it'll be similar to away game because we'll be travelling the night before. An earlier kickoff as well. We've not had a 1 p.m. kickoff, so getting your head around that, making sure you're out of bed on time and things like that, doing what you can to get ahead of it. But no, apart from that, just a lot of excitement. We know there's going to be a pretty good crowd and a good place to play rugby for a special cause. And obviously back in the Prem, it's exciting and we want to do our best for the rest of the season.
Yeah. How does it change your schedule? Is it going to throw your eating habits all out and things like that to have a game a few hours earlier? Like way different to Paris, which was 9:10 local time, wasn't it? In the Six
Yeah,
Nations?
I know. You do have to think about it a little bit. I think, most of it's around the eating, making sure you sort of eat a lot more sort of the night before, go to bed at a good time, wake up at a good time, have a good breakfast, probably a little bit earlier than normal, not lying in. And then I guess it's probably better for some people because there's no time to sort of have a bit of downtime in the day. You're probably up straight at it. We'll probably have a little walkthrough at the hotel. The lads will get together and have a coffee. So in some ways, it could work to our advantage.
Yeah. Oh, on the flip side, what was that Paris experience like? Have you had a game as late as that? And then obviously it was so crazy as well. You're probably pumped full of adrenaline and you can't sleep and you're full of caffeine and post-match function. Like, how does that work for a player, those mad late French nights?
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting. As you say, I've not played a game quite as late as that before. And to have that crowd, to have my family there, some of my mates as well, the adrenaline was definitely pumping. I felt probably a little bit calmer off the back of the game the week before, sort of knew what I wanted to do and certain sides of it. So maybe felt a bit more comfortable in that respect. But yeah, I didn't get to sleep, I don't think, till sort of 3-4 in the morning, not for any fault of my own, just I couldn't get to sleep because your heart's still pounding and all the rest of it. So it'll definitely be a special memory.
And how are you feeling after the Six Nations? Like, it was, I guess, quite a strange tournament because you weren't involved in the matchday squads to start with, and then you were front and centre for 2 weeks, but not the results you wanted to get. So try and sum it up for me. How was that as a sort of 2-month experience for you? Your first Six Nations?
Yeah, my first, my second campaign. But first Six Nations. It was. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed being part of the team. I enjoyed training really hard. I enjoyed. We talk about competing and connecting. So competing hard on the training pitch and connecting with the team off it. Learning about myself, about my game, about how I sort of link with others, and sort of going hard in the gym as well when you're not playing at the start. And then I got given the opportunity to play at the back end of it, and I just wanted to give it my all, hold nothing back, try and create as best connections as I could in a short window with the people I was playing with. Obviously, the results didn't go away, but being part of the group, it was unbelievable how hard everyone tried, how everyone committed to what we were doing, how the belief was still there even when things were closing in around us. Seeing how leaders in that environment lead definitely has given me some thoughts to take away coming back into Gloucester. And like, credit to the coaches, they stuck strong. They gave us what we needed, and obviously things we haven't quite got around the corner yet, maybe. But I still really enjoyed the experience and learned a lot and have some great memories to take away from it. So yeah, ups and downs, but I think when I look back on it, very proud.
Yeah, and talk to us a bit about the difference in the week between the France and the Italy game, or the Italy and the France game, that way round, because just visually it looks it's like a different style of play, a different attitude perhaps in Rome as opposed to Paris. So in as much detail as you can, what happened behind the scenes in that week? What did you learn about each other and yourselves, and how you wanted to play?
It's interesting because the tactics probably didn't change too much. You've only got a week to prepare for a game, so we're not going to throw everything out the window and try and be a completely different team. I guess maybe that's what the coaches are reflecting on now, but they definitely doubled down on the tactics they were feeding us, and that's all you can ask for as players, really. You don't want too much change. So maybe there was probably just time to develop a little bit more the connections, as I was speaking around before. They obviously made a change pretty much to the whole back line from memory, so that probably was why it looked so clunky. I think we went into the Italy game with the right mindset, with the desire to move the ball and create opportunities, and also be tactical and manage territory as well as we could. I just think it didn't quite click for whatever reason. So maybe just a bit of continuity, and then also just a slight tweak in mindset in terms of, we knew the French were going to play like they always do, and they do it unbelievably well. They can score tries from anywhere, so we knew that we were going into that game needing to combat that and almost try and beat it. So I don't think tactically much changed. I just think there was a mindset, and after a tough result, maybe just a bit more belief that we can do what we're talking about. I think the players will always back themselves. I'll always back myself. But maybe it just felt a bit more tangible. And also just some passes just came off. We made some breaks. There was good momentum in the game. So yeah, it's difficult to say, but I think just a bit more belief and a bit more cohesion, maybe.
Yeah, and who was driving those conversations? Like, take us into that week, because I imagine there was a bit of soul searching and a bit of tough conversations. Like we've seen England Rugby have put up the team talk that Ellis Genge gave, which gets the hairs on the back of the neck going, doesn't it? Like, take us into that dressing room. What was the conversation? What were the conversations like that week?
Yeah, there's some incredible leaders. Like you saw, Genji gave us that unbelievable speech, which was exactly what we needed at the time, I think. Maro is always extremely clear on what we're trying to achieve each session, each meeting, and then how do we put that onto the pitch. I think certain connections that I know that I made with Finn Smith at 10 and Tommy Freeman outside me, kind of what we expected from each other. So yeah, probably from that aspect, the coaching aspect, I think all the coaches were working so hard to try and get us to have a good sort of performance and result. I remember Kev Simfield gave us a big sort of talk about how do we generate this belief in a time where it's looking hard to believe. So I think he's always someone that the team looked to go to in those moments. But everyone was pushing the right direction. Staff, players, and players that weren't picked. So yeah, I think the leaders stepped up and everyone tried to do their part.
Do you remember more detail of that Kev Simfield speech? Like, he's a inspirational figure, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he sort of made comparisons to the world leaders, talking about how it can sometimes be tough to believe, but it's just the power of a group to come together and believe in something even when it could be questioned. I can't remember the exact examples that he used, but yeah, he's always a good character, and a lot of what he says, people just back in.
Yeah. And for you, in the middle of that, you're a guy at that point who had 3 caps, and now you've got 4. So how easy is that to find your voice? Because, as you said, you were part of quite an inexperienced back division, but you're playing 12 for England in a test match, so you can't hide away, can you? So how easy or otherwise did you find that to kind of like drive what you were thinking? I guess it helps that you go back a long way with Finn Smith, who you played at Worcester with through the academy and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. No, you can't sit back and sort of expect people to do stuff for you. I wanted to put the best performance on the pitch that I could, so I knew that I needed to ask the right questions to the people around me, make sure that they knew what I was thinking, how I saw the game. So I think the way that my rugby sort of mind tends to work is sort of is definitely from a tactical point of view. trying to find small margins. How can we push our attack? How can we push our defence? And have some clear thoughts going into the game. So, probably just working on that cohesion, having those small conversations with the people around you in the week, and making sure when you're in the heat of the battle and there's however many 80,000 people screaming, you almost don't need to have those conversations in the moment. You sort of subconsciously know how we're going to react to each other. So, everyone pulls their part.
Yeah, and is that? I know the result didn't go the way you wanted to, but the way you guys played, is that what you want to see now as the England style going forward? Like, I guess it adapts a bit game to game depending on who you're playing against, doesn't it? But do you think that's a strong, good blueprint for an England team to take forward to the summer and beyond?
Yeah, I think so. I think the coaches are very clear on the game plan that they want to give us, and I think the players buy it. They back it. And now, sort of off the back of the performance that we had in Paris, there's the belief that we can continue to score tries and keep pushing our game. I don't think there ever was a lack of belief. I just think sometimes it's hard when things aren't going your way to fully buy into it. So yeah, I think it would do great for our confidence. Obviously, we didn't win, and that's probably what people will remember and things like that. But for me personally, anyway, I think I've taken a lot from it, both in terms of good stuff to remember, bad stuff to remember, all the rest of it. So hopefully I'll be in a better spot, and I know that the rest of the team will be too.
Yeah, and bring it back to Gloucester, but also looking ahead to what you hope is a nice summer series of matches. What do you want to add to your own game at Gloucester that you then bring in so that you can be the man who plays 12 for England away to the box? Because that looks like a tantalising prospect, that game, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool to go from Paris to South Africa. I think Steve's pretty good at catching up with players and making sure that you have one or two things that he expects you to work on, and they obviously come from the players as well, so it's not one-sided. For me, it would be collisions both sides of the ball. The extremely physical sport, so how can I impose myself in defence with my tackle technique, around the breakdown, making good decisions in terms of trying to jackal and counter ruck, and then on the other side of the ball, probably having a good balance between my passing game and my ball carrying game, trying to get good post contact meters, secondary fight, winning collisions to create offload opportunities. So all around the collision area for me. And then apart from that, something that I put on myself is just my leadership, always trying to grow that side of things. How do I relate to my teammates? How do we become better as a group? So yeah, those two I'd say.
Long way ahead, but not a bad place. Well, it'd be daunting, but someone like you would love a go at someone like Damien Dialende or Andre Esterhazen at 12. They've got quite good centres down there, don't they, in South Africa when we get there?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my first starts for Gloucester was against Andre for Harlequins. I think first line out of the game, I probably was way too excited, flew out the line, and I put in a pretty good tackle. So hopefully that bodes well. But as any rugby player wants to do, you want to play against the best. You want to prove yourself. And you want to have those memories when you finish playing. So it's a really exciting opportunity. Obviously, I'll only be very short-term focused now, but it's good to have those long-term goals and aspirations.
Awesome, Seb. Well, best of luck for the Slater Cup on the weekend. Big game for Gloucester, big game for all your fans and everything else, and for the Prem. So hope it goes well for you.
Cheers. Thank you.
So great to have Seb Atkinson on the pod. The Gloucester and England man had to wait his time, didn't he, to get back in the England squad towards the end of the Six Nations. As we mentioned, Gloucester with a big win. Harlequins absolutely rubbish. Bath hammering Saracens on Friday night. I wanted to pick up, though, with a point, Charlie, that you have already mentioned, something you mentioned in our WhatsApp over the weekend, of the playoff race, and have we already seen it whittled down to 5 teams vying for the 4 positions?
Yeah, that was a point I thought about after watching Saracens, to be honest, and just seeing that a side that they weren't bringing. There was a couple of players that they didn't bring back in Maritoji and Jamie George, but they seemed kind of well set up to have a real tilt at this this block of the season. And after the first 10 minutes where they looked like a coherent team, they looked really poor. Mark McCall doesn't mince his words after games like that. And as we said before this recording, he's having to do that a lot this year. And I just feel like with them slipping off, they're now in sixth, having lost 6 of their 11 games. It does feel like they are hanging on by their fingernails. Below them, Sale are already all but mathematically out of the...
They're 12 points behind them.
Yeah.
And only 1 place below them.
And then you're left with Saints at the top, Bath, Leicester, Exeter, Bristol, who are all beyond the 35-point mark and all looking just like more coherent teams. And that's kind of... It's a reflection on how well they're playing, their tactical identity, but also a little bit worrying, I would say, for... And I know with the 10-team league that, as you said before, that sometimes just aren't going to be pleased with how their season goes, and they're gonna fall off the pace. But the lack of variety this far out, with 7 rounds left, is a little bit concerning, a little bit strange, really.
Yeah, is that worrying? Because we're used to saying every single year that the fight for the playoffs is so fierce, it's so competitive. Often it might be because there are a lot of average teams in the league, so therefore you had a lot of teams that had very similar records. So what do we make of this? Is it just one of those things that the cyclical nature of a league and teams' form and fortunes?
Is it reflected that I've got 2 different points to make here? Is it reflected? So we've talked about this a lot, that the Prem used to love the fact that loads of the games finished within 7 points. It made a huge thing about it, and they would show this graph every season of we've got the shortest points difference between all of our games and the highest amount of tries compared to lots of other competitions. And now that's just not true anymore, and so they've slightly tweaked it to be the most unpredictable league in the world. So there's that, but you kind of go.
But the danger of this, in what the league table's telling us, is it is becoming more predictable.
Well, but that's what I mean. And so, actually, it's rare, though, in the last 10 years, maybe, that we've got this far out and gone, there's only really going to be 5 or 6 that are going to get in here. But the second point I was going to make is I wonder how much the Champions Cup will sort of like throw the snow globe a bit, because you've got Northampton and Bath who are likely to win their last 16 games and then play each other in the quarterfinal. You've got a Sale Quins game where both of them, that is the only thing they've got left in their season, really. And at the moment, you'd back Sale, even though that's at the Stoop. But who knows, because Quins can just be mental and chuck a random win in there.
Maybe important to say that Saints were in that position last year, having sort of sunk down, having retained their title defence did not go very well. It was a bit like a Liverpool in the football, right? And then they were sort of, but they were able to sort of put their eggs in the basket of the Champions Cup.
No, but I wonder, and look, those are massive games and big last 16, big quarter-final back-to-back, and someone's going to get injured and someone's going to fall out of that, and therefore, or someone's going to go deeper in it like Bath, and then as much as their squad is incredibly deep and everything else, that gets tested the deeper you go, because the next game after that would be Toulouse or Bordeaux away, and you sort of go, I wonder whether by the time we get to the beginning of May, when we're in the semi-finals of the Champions Cup, the pictures change slightly. Not in terms of where people are sitting in the league and the fact that there's a gap between 5 and the rest, but the fact that lots of things have changed over the last month or so to mean that Finn Russell might be injured, for example, or like Thomas du Toit's banned. Like you don't know what's going to happen in that next few months, which then flicks it around. Because you look at it at the moment, you go, Saints and Bath surely are going to be 1 and 2 in whatever order and be a home semi. And then you also look at whoever's going to finish 3rd or 4th, incredibly unlikely to beat them away from home, right?
I have a theory about this.
Go on.
I think Leicester will not. I think Leicester away to Bath would be a hard sell. I think Leicester away to Saints. I think Leicester would fancy Saints away.
Okay.
The local rivalry thing, just how they match up a size. I think what's quite nice is that certainly that top 3. I think it's good. I do think it will be a mad scramble for. I do think it will be a mad scramble for 4th. I can see those 3 consolidating and securing those top 3, and I actually think they match up really well. That styles make fights thing. I think that's quite a cool little blend at the top there.
And we said it, I think, before the Six Nations, but absolute marketing dream if you had an East Midlands derby and a Bristol Bath derby as the 2 semi-finals.
The Bristol Bath semi last year was banger, wasn't it? It was brilliant.
And they just wind up Ellis Genge all week, and you've got a game, haven't you? Easy.
Yeah, I think what we've seen previously is to try and offset the European thing is use this sprint they've got now,
The run-in.
to try and secure home semi-final as early as possible. So it doesn't matter about finishing first, just try and secure a top 2 as early as possible. So then you can ease off for a bit in the league and not worry about it to try and progress in Europe. I think when you look at, I think you're right, Will, about the nature of this league has been unusual for the Prem, but the league is split. Like Bristol in 5th have won 8 out of 11, and Saracens in 6th have won 5, and it gets worse from there. Whereas in previous years, Saracens would have a better record, Sale in 7th would have a better record, and it would be a bit more.
Sale 3 wins, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah,
11.
So to think that Sale Quins in the last 16 of the Champions Cup, when they've got 5 wins, 5 league wins all season between them, is mad, really. But I think it's the fact that Saracens and Sale, sort of 6th and 7th, have been so unpredictable or inconsistent, and when they lose badly. That actually that you haven't had that kind of extra level of competition. I think the 6th and 7th in previous years, we've have been in the playoff hunt for a lot longer. It just so happens, I think, this year that both have dropped off markedly.
Yeah, you may well be right. It's one of those things. Teams go up and down, and maybe there's a couple of teams that have gone down this year. But I just don't think there's too many teams really that have improved this year. Like if you look at the table, Northampton and Exeter have both improved massively from last year. Their domestic form anyway. I know Saints got to the Champions Cup final. Bath, Leicester, Bristol, I think you can make the case they're probably around similar where they were. Bath look pretty dominant. Leicester and Bristol are both kind of in the mix for the playoffs. But then Sarries, Sale, Gloucester, Quins have all, I think you could say, got worse. Newcastle,
slightly better because
could
they've won
say
a game.
Slightly better, yeah, because they've won, but they're still bottom of the table. So
and they could have beaten Saints weirdly, like
It's
not weirdly,
close
but
game,
like they
yeah.
could have beaten them. Like that would have been the top side losing to the bottom side at home.
yeah, but I think there is probably, particularly with Sale and Sarries, an underperformance based on where we all thought
Definitely.
that they were going to be.
And actually, to extend your point, perhaps if you were to take a 2-year view of it, Saints haven't really improved. They just had one season where they bottomed out, and they've gone back to where they were before, haven't they?
Mm.
So I think you're right. That Exeter and maybe Exeter have done the same, where they had a season where they almost overperformed, then they underperformed, and now they're back to sort of performing where they kind of should be again. So, yeah,
Which reminds me of I'm performing how I want me to perform. Very, very David Brent. I think Leicester are an interesting one for me, and they're fresh in my mind having been there on Saturday. But Jeff Parling, it was put to him, I think have you had time to reflect on how you're doing, having lost so many international caps over the summer? Dan Cole, Ben Youngs, Andre Pollard, Julian Montoya. He had the figure of caps that he'd lost at his fingertips. So he seems to me a very self-deprecating guy. He's very wary of saying anything that could be blown up into a headline. But I think he was very aware of what he was taking on, and I think he's doing really well. They look, as he said himself, they will never disregard sort of set-piece solidity at Leicester. That won't. Their supporters won't allow that to happen. The culture of the club won't allow that to happen. But the way they're moving the ball to space is really impressive, and the sign of a side evolving. And that was kind of crystallised in their bonus point try, with the whole stadium telling them to kick the ball off, and Freddie Stewart going cross field to Billy Searle to set up Gabe Hemweb. That was a really good snapshot of how they're progressing.
I find Leicester fascinating because, and this is going to sound maybe like a bit of a backhanded compliment, but I mean it genuinely. Like you look at their side on paper, maybe particularly the backs, and you go, that's not a 9, 10, 12 that's winning the title, is it? But then they play, and you go, wow.
Billy Searle, third best fly half in the country at the minute.
He's been sensational.
He's been outstanding.
And he looks like a kind of Moneyball signing, doesn't he? But he's been amazing. And then maybe that makes me think that there's this something intangible at Tigers, this kind of, whatever the chaos, there's this enduring standards. around the club. Like, they've been in carnage for a decade, and they're still in Prem finals. They've still won a title. They're still in the playoff hunt most years. They still largely have a winning record. There's one season with Dan McKellar where they were pretty crap, but like, they've had a random one season with Checker. They've now had Parling. They've had the whole Borthwick thing, and then him and all of his staff getting torn out, and they still are there. And maybe that compares so badly to somewhere like Harlequins, where you go, their carnage has caught up with them, and now look at them. Whereas you go, Tigers just sort of exist in this kind of weird position where nothing is stable until maybe the Parling era. I think they would hope that. The problem with that is that the better he gets, the more likely he is to probably get a test job, isn't he? Which is the Borthwick situation. But you go, this is a club that's constantly in flux, but always in positions 1 to 5 in the league.
I think they sort of know who they are and what they stand for. And that was what Laurie Dalrymple was sort of conceding when we went into the pod 3 months ago, that Quins have lost all sense of who they are as a club, what their DNA is. You talked about recentering. And Gloucester have struggled for such a established traditional club. They're not firing in the way that you would expect a club like Gloucester to. Over a period of time, they've been one of the weaker clubs in the league.
20 years.
Yeah.
They exist in 7th to 9th.
Yeah.
With the odd anomaly.
Which a team like, you think a club like Gloucester shouldn't, because of the support they have and the catchment area they have and how big rugby is in that part of the world.
Like
Bath,
until
yeah.
the last 3 years.
I was at the Stoop on Saturday and thinking, well, you've got two clubs here and a similar. They both went into the Six Nations in a hole, and Gloucester have come out of it with a bit more sense of who they are and what they want to be. They went and Chris Boyd hasn't actually, I don't think he's officially started, but there's been a lot of conversations with Chris Boyd.
Was he there this weekend?
Was he there?
I don't know. I
don't think so.
No.
I didn't see him. I did look for him. I didn't see him. But I think
Chris.
I would have spotted him. I don't think he was there. But he, the kind of the wise Kiwi, the guy who is really sort of the godfather of everything that Northampton have built in the last decade. That's a smart piece of recruitment. You flip that to Quins, who've been on this global search for DOR since December and still haven't got anywhere. The only news we have is that, like, Warren Gatland pulled out of the conversation. For example, there's chat that Robbie Deans has signed up in a similar role to Chris Boyd as an advisor, another wise Kiwi, and yet there's no confirmation from the club that that's even happened. So they've emerged from the Six Nations window in exactly the same place they were going into it. And Gloucester are not a great team, but they had a set piece. And while the club kind of went too far away from that as their fundamentals over the last 18 months, they've just sort of gone, right, well, we've got a set piece. So let's go and smash Harlequins in the scrum and do them in the line-out. Because Harlequins have got nothing. They literally had nothing. And so back to the original point about Leicester, like, they've always had, you always know what the Leicester way is. It's something there's like a theme or a thread through the chaos that you should always be able to fall back on something. And Quins are falling back on nothing. Gloucester have, I think, through the Prem Cup, through the Six Nations, have fallen back on, right, we know that we can, at the very least, get a foothold in the game because we've got a scrum and a line-out.
And that's maybe the fortune of Tigers. Their DNA is scrum, maul, set piece, fight, dog, spirit. Whereas Quins' DNA is loose, attacking, swashbuckling, entertaining, which you can't fall back on.
No.
Whereas Tigers can fall back on a DNA because they are the fundamentals of the game. Whereas Quins can't, because you can't do the lovely stuff without the foundation. And so if they don't have a foundation, they can't inject their DNA
and Marcus
into anything.
Is there trying to make things happen behind a pack that's not winning any collisions, not winning any set piece. And he was forcing it. There was nothing on. So he'd kind of fall back to try a cross kick that would go straight out or would not work. He's trying to make stuff happen behind nothing.
I remembered why I asked about Chris Boyd. I think I can see his nose in the celebration video. I think that's him, isn't it?
That is.
There you go.
That
I
is him.
remembered just as I
Sorry,
asked.
you've spotted his nose.
Quite literally.
That is an amazing.
His
side-
nose and
This is why we
his
signed
nose,
him.
his eyes, and his
Oh,
the top of his head.
That is him,
There
to
you
be
go.
fair.
And I think he gets cut out of it very quickly.
That is an amazing side profile
So he
identification from Charlie there.
This is why we signed him up. This details, man.
So at Quins, we had I had George Skivington sitting alongside me for 20 minutes of the second half. For the rest of the game, he was in the row behind. Chris Boyd wasn't there with the coaches, so he must have been watching.
He's got in there for the victory song.
Just in to lead the song.
What is there? Because everyone's got one, don't they? Who doesn't have a victory song?
God,
We never see Bath.
There's having a victory song and then there's putting it on social media, isn't there?
Do you have one if it's not?
Yeah, well, that's it, yeah.
The Gloucester song is the same as the England song, because Johnny May. Yeah. Whereas the England one, they redo the lyrics every time.
Yeah, the bit you see is the bit that is the boring bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't know if Quins have got a victory song. They've not had much opportunity to practice.
Very true. But on Gloucester, by the way, I saw the quotes in your report from Skivington, Alex. I find it really fascinating how he said, look, last year they focused a lot on attack and they did have some great attacking stuff. And then the expense of that was some of their set piece work. I'm always kind of like, if you're really good at set piece, why can't you layer on the attack as well as the set piece?
You went down there pre-season and spoke to
Season
him
before last, wasn't it?
all about how this
Attacking
because they'd been a bit like Exeter. They could just rely on scrum, line out, close range tries, red zone conversion would be really high, and they had this huge shift where they suddenly went, "We're just going to play."
Yeah.
And
that was
it worked briefly, but it
talking to James Lightfoot-Brown largely, and Don Waldock, their defence coach, and James Lightfoot-Brown came from London Irish, so that school of kind of playing what you see, playing wide, all that sort of stuff. And I think also it was I remember them talking about being what they were seeing was a trend of the game, which was right, wasn't it? Like Charlie did a really interesting deep dive into why we're getting so many points for the Sunday Times, and that is where the game has gone and is going to keep going probably. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Alfie. It's like, by doing the attack, why does it mean that you also ignore the set piece and line out and all that?
I mean, if you think of Gloucester under Skivington, they've had a period where they had a driving wall that was virtually unstoppable. They've had a period last year.
But they couldn't really score any other way.
And then,
it's like that was it.
And then they had a period last year where Thomas Williams is the player of the season. Their attacking games, and you almost add up all the pieces, and you think at some point you should be incredible. But they've never really been that good amongst.
Some of it is simply time. Is you have a finite amount of time in the week, and that's what you put your eggs. You put your chips towards certain
we saw that with England,
things.
Didn't we?
Yeah.
That the Italy thing, it was clear that they'd just gone right. Well, let's just be hard to beat. And I know we were not that hard to beat in the end. And then the France week, it was like, oh, wait, hang on, we could probably move the ball. And again, you did a piece in the first 30 seconds, minute, you went, oh, ambition. They're suddenly not looking to just kick. They're actually going to try and pass.
And part of it is a decision that you make. If you have a line out in the opposition 22 and you're wanting to play, or a line out in the opposition half and you're wanting to play, you're therefore not practicing your mauling in the week, or you're not even choosing that option in the game because you've decided that your identity is something else. The perfect balance is that the opposition don't know which one you're going to turn to. And that ultimately is, England, to rewind, just became so predictable because they only had one approach. In those games, when they were struggling to react to losing to Scotland, they were just so predictable in how they played. Then they rock up in France, and Ben Spencer, who is a brilliant game manager, but for England has been sort of pigeonholed as the box kicking 9. Suddenly he's making breaks, he's taking a step, he's seeing what's on, and then the defence don't know what's coming at them. So the sweet spot is to have both threats. And Gloucester weirdly have veered from one to the other, and actually their perfect game plan is right bang in the middle.
Very quickly, that's what Bath are doing. Because I remember going to the rec a few times recently before Six Nations and going, man, would they ever pass the bloody ball? It was just Abano carry, Dutoy carry, try. Abano carry, Dutoy carry, try. The whole front row scoring every week. And now look at them. weather changes, play the ball wide, Arundel scoring intercepts, crossfield kicks, Russell's taking the mickey. They've got both things.
You want variety, don't you? I wanted to bring it back round all the way to Leicester and the sort of a real moment that crystallised the identity of the club. Joe Hayes came off, I think, with about 10 minutes to go. The ovation he got, I think, for the scrum battle was really even. I thought George Kloska was really good for Bristol. So it wasn't necessarily just for that game. It was recognition of how he'd gone in the Six Nations. Just really kind of touching. It was really nice.
Has anyone's stock risen more in the last 3 to 6 months in English rugby than Joe Hayes?
I do like that sort of like educated rugby crowd, isn't it? That's a very like cliche thing, but also being like, this clap is for your Six Nations performance, not necessarily for today. Well done, Joe.
Lads, as always, time is against us a little bit, so we need to wrap up. I think next week we should maybe set aside a bit more time to chat about Sale, because geez, what on earth has gone on there for those of us that predicted Sale might be winning the Prem this year,
including the Premiership Rugby CEO
and myself. Just to put my hand up there, it's not looking good.
You did.
I did, yeah. Unfortunately, let's not go. Well, we ran out of time.
We flip-flopped, didn't we? At the beginning, it was me and you at the launch.
Yeah, what did I say? I did flip-flop. I think I ended up...
And then you said, I think it's going to be Bath, but I'm going to say Sale. And I was like, you can't bottle it and have two answers. So then you went, right, I'll go Sale then. Yeah, and I bullied you into a terrible answer, basically.
Well, I'd rather have a terrible answer than backing. But no, never mind. Let's not go there. Big weekend coming up just to finish on for the Prem. We got the 3 back-to-back Saturday games.
The bonanza.
Yeah, so I'm going to be in Cardiff for Bristol Quins, but it's Gloucester, Leicester at Villa, and then Sarries, Northampton at Tottenham as well. We've seen them do this over the last few years, haven't they? But it's, looking forward to it.
There's a joke in there about Tottenham somewhere, isn't there? About seeing some quality sport or tries. Although Sarries, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think that would be quite a good occasion at Tottenham. Dizzy Rascal.
Yeah.
The Villa one is, I guess, the first sign of what a pro franchise in Birmingham might look like. The Slater Cup, Gloucester, Leicester, lots of, the union those two clubs have now through Ed Slater's is really touching and really important. And I really hope it works for them at Villa Park, because I don't think they'll sell it out. But if you could add in an extra big game, again, just rewind to the conversation about what the league starts to look like. If you've got tens of thousands in Cardiff, 40,000 plus at Tottenham, they get a really good crowd at Villa that they can build on and make that an annual fixture. Just looks really good for the league. And again, back to my point about what the whole competition looks like. It's not just what it means for Gloucester and Leicester playing that game there. It's how the league could showcase itself.
Yeah.
Favourite Dizzy Rascal song?
Have to remember them.
You got to have these off the tip of your tongue. Come on, Dance With Me, Holiday.
That one. Holiday.
Dirty Stinking Bass. That's a good one.
Are you going to answer?
I know Dizzy. What are you laughing about?
Nothing.
Just because it's not Spice Girls, you think he doesn't know about this? Bonkers, obviously.
Well, what's yours?
Holiday's good.
Yeah.
A pina colada, whatever you rather. White wine, that's fine. Just give me a lager. That one.
I can't top that.
I think that's straight for YouTube, that one.
On that note, we'll leave it there. Lads, pleasure as always. Charlie, you were at some Champ Rugby over the weekend.
I was, yeah.
You back there this weekend?
I was sort of a bit absentmindedly didn't squeeze in my point when we were talking about the sort of teams going down and what jeopardy that looks like, because I think of the uncertainty of the Champ. And I want to shout out my wife Abs, who made my boy. It was a family affair. My boy was mascotting for Richmond and watched about 2 minutes of the game. There was somebody with a kite behind the post, so he was playing with that a bit more. But Abs made a really good point, saying, "Look, this is the variety of the league. You've got a team in Cornish Pirates who I think have fluctuated between being full-time but very dedicated. They had Will Beckinsale was on the bench, who's an excellent scrum half, who's been at Exeter Chiefs, and they were playing Richmond, who are sort of towards the bottom of that league, who are part-time, and their programs are just different. And it's funny when somebody that comes in who's sort of unfamiliar with that is sort of going, how's that allowed? How are full-time athletes playing against part-time athletes? And obviously Pirates won 66-13, and she was sort of like, well, obviously. And you're like, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Good point. Yeah, exactly. And it's also, I mean, it's a can of worms that we can't open now. We don't have too much time for. But I think also enhances their argument for why the Prem has done what it's done, and the disparity between it and the Champ. And they might say it's because of the cutting in funding. I think it was before that anyway. But yeah, Really, really interesting. Lads, we'll have to leave it there. Same time next week, we'll be back with you. If you want to send us an email, there's quite a lot that we got into today in terms of the newsy stuff with James Dyson, the direction of the league, or any of the match things, or what Seb Atkinson spoke about in that interview. The email address is theruck@thetimes.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening. You can also watch us now on YouTube. Head over to the Times Sport YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll be back with you next week.